Hi, I'm Jeff Van Gundy, and you're listening to Thunderbus.
Welcome to Thunderbus with your hosts Watson and Bones.
I'm Watson.
And I am Bones.
We get serious about the Thunder on this podcast.
But we don't get too serious.
Bones, today we are joined by Joey Crawford. Joey was an NBA referee for 39 years and officiated over 2,500 regular season games and 50 in the finals. He worked 374 playoff games, which is the most ever by an NBA referee. Joey, welcome on the bus.
Thank you for having me. I'm very happy when somebody actually wants to talk to me.
We're happy you're talking to us.
Speaking of times when you were happy that someone talked to you, can you share your Jack Nicholson story?
The Jack Nicholson, I mean, I love the guy. You know, I remember his first movie that I saw was Easy Rider, and I was a young guy, and I was just impressed by the guy.
1969, classic movie.
Yeah,
Peter Fonda.
Very good. You're good. So I get into the league in '77, and I'm 25 years old. And I'm very. I didn't say hello to people. I knew my place as a young ref, and got to L.A. And first year, I never said anything to Jack. You know, and he was sitting there with all his people. And then the next year, I didn't say anything. You know. So it's like my third or fourth year, and I take my warm-up jacket off before the game, and I just planted it. I just sat it right by the table, on the table where we normally sit it. And I looked down at him, and I said, what the hell? And I said, hey, Jack. And he looked at me, and he said, hey, Joe. And I thought, it was like, I said to myself, I didn't want to act like this nitwit, you know, so I just said, Jack Nicholson knows who I am. So I get back to the hotel. We stayed at a place called the Hacienda way back in the day. I think the rate was about $4 a night, and I got back to the hotel, and I didn't care. I live in Philly, and I said, I'm going to call my wife. It's a 3-hour difference. She answers the phone. She goes, because we didn't have cell phones back then. And I said, Mary, you're not going to believe this. Jack Nicholson knows who I am. She goes, I don't care.
Oh, that's incredible.
It was awesome. And then through the years, you know, Jack hollered at me like he hollered at every other ref. So it was awesome. Awesome.
Well, Joey, clearly we care because it was the first question we asked you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Joey, you famously ejected Tim Duncan while he was laughing on the bench, which Commissioner Stern suspended you for. Some years later, you told the New York Times that the Duncan thing probably changed my life and that it gave me a new perspective. Can you talk a little about the incident and what you learned from it?
Oh, sure. I'm very open about it. I overstepped my bounds. He was laughing. Something, you know, a couple things transpired during the game that he didn't like. I was not the most mild-mannered ref, and that's. I'm not saying that proudly. Believe me, I'm not. And I took offense to it. What I should have done, and I've thought about this a million times, I should have went over to Popovich and said, hey, Pop, you want to take care of that? But I overstepped my bounds. I was, you know, I guess I was reading my, Joe Crawford, one of the best refs in the league, all that crap. He's not going to do that in my game. And I threw him out. And Commissioner Stern took offense to it because I had a couple incidents in my history that weren't too good. And I knew that when I did it, I was in trouble. And I was called on the carpet and suspended for the rest of the season. And I went to a sports psychologist, which I'm very proud of. And I spoke at length with the sports psychologist, and he's a friend of mine now. And I tell people I have him on speed dial. And but he really helped me. He got me to realize that I had a passion for this, and I just overstepped my bounds. I guess what I really learned from it was humility and a humbleness, and it really did. I mean, I think my last, and I've said this a million times, I think my last 10 years of my career, my last 10 years were better than my first 29, and it was all because I was able to deal with things better on the court, and that was because of Joel Fish, who was my sports psychologist.
That's great. People a lot of times I think feel like they can't change. People think they hit 25 or 30 and then they just are who they are. But that's a great story because it reveals 30 years into your career you can change.
Yeah, see, I didn't know why I did the things that I did. I mean, I had a history of that, like flipping, flipping out, and a lot of it comes from your upbringing and things like that. I mean, which my dad was the same way, and a lot of it I got from that, because your upbringing. But I'm very proud of the fact that I did go.
Well, speaking of your upbringing. Your father and your brother were both umpires in the major leagues, where players get thrown out for just arguing balls and strikes. But in the NBA, coaches and players are constantly talking to the officials, pleading their case, sometimes politely, sometimes not. How do these complaints influence the way officials call the game?
They don't. It's just something that you deal with. It's all part of our game. It's part of what we do. If a player or coach talks to a referee in a mild way and isn't doing it on every possession, there is nothing wrong with talking about plays. Referees get plays wrong. They do. They get plays wrong. I mean, I've never seen anybody change them. Like now we have the coach's challenge and you change it. But what I'm saying is that just because a player or a coach approach you doesn't mean that you're going to change your call. What you have to learn as a ref, and watching tape gave me this, and I guess we started really delving into tape maybe in the late 80s, maybe early 90s. And what tape gave me was, the coaches are right sometimes, and the players are right. So when a coach or a player would come to me and talk to about a play, if they were reasonable, I would say, you could be right. You could be right. Because they were right sometimes. Now, back in the day, when they didn't have tape, that was a different thing. You would just say, I was right. You would just, because there was no way he could check it.
Right.
and because he's now, that, you lose credibility. I tell our young refs this now. You lose credibility if you keep telling the coach and player that you were right. Because sometimes you're wrong. They're going to watch the same tape that you're going to watch, and it's going to be clear cut that you missed the play. So just say to them, listen, you could be right. I might have made a mistake. And everybody, because our game is a game of mistakes. People miss shots, defensive assignments. Coaches put players in where they shouldn't put them in. And we all make mistakes. So, if you admit it to coaches and players, most reasonable coaches and players get that.
Joey, do some players make it worse for themselves by constantly yapping even when they're dead wrong?
No, I don't think they make it worse for themselves. I think what happens is that they lose credibility. It's the same as the ref that keeps saying, I got it right, I got it right, I got it right. And that player goes in and says, you got it wrong. I think players that complain all the time, all you do, and again, Monty McCutcheon and our refereeing team, Mark Wunderlich, we teach this. We teach it. Just look at the player, be professional. You got a point. If the player keeps coming to you and complaining, say, that's it. Had enough, and you do it just like that. You don't scream like, I used to do back in the old days. You scream at a player, get in the player's face. You just tell them, or you go to the coach and you say, listen, I've had enough. That's it. And then the next time you better hit them with a T. But they don't make it, I wouldn't say they make it hard for themselves. I think what they do is they lose credibility because you're really not listening to them anymore. Because all they're doing is complaining because somewhere along the line in their playing career, someone told them if they complain, the referee would give them a call. And that's the farthest thing from the truth.
Sometimes when they're complaining, they say what broadcasters refer to as the magic words. Is it true that if a player says the F word, that it's an automatic T?
No, it depends on how they say it, because a lot of refs, you could say it as an adjective. You could say it as no. That
it's
is
a versatile word.
If they just scream it at you, no, we do not teach that. No, that's we don't do that at all. Now, if they say at you, that's totally different.
Yeah,
that's automatic.
Totally different. Well, yeah. I mean, if you're going to lose credibility as a referee if you don't, as we say, run the game. Somebody out there has to run the game, and that's why you're out there. You're out there to make sure that the rules are enforced, and that's part of the rules. Part of the rules are how people, players, and coaches not behave themselves is not the right word. It's how they conduct themselves is probably a better word.
So if a player says F you to another player, is that also an automatic T?
You can call it, we can call a taunt on that. Yeah, we could call it taunt. Yes. That could be a T. I wouldn't say, I hate to talk about automatic because automatic doesn't always work. But if somebody did that in a game and I heard him and he looked right at the player and went, F you, that to us is a taunt, and it's in the rules. That's a taunt because we're afraid of what's going to happen next. Back in the day, we had a lot of fights and things like that, and this was one of the tools that we use to curtail that. So it's not bad. It really isn't bad.
That was probably a big deal when you were first entering the league because that was right around the time of the Tom Jonovich punch.
Yes, there you go. I mean, it was a different league. There was a lot of fights, a lot of things that were happening in games that don't happen today. Now, what happened back then is the commissioner fined the hell out of guys, and it stopped somewhat. We don't very, very rarely do we have fights now. And if they are, they're just, somebody slaps somebody. But back in the day, you were on guard. You were really on guard. You were on guard for in fact, the older referees back in the day used to teach you how to actually break a fight up. And they always taught you to go in with your back first. Never go in with your hands. Go in with your back because you might be able to push a player out with your body and your back and your tush to get them. So you were actually taught back in the day how to break up a fight, which is pretty nuts.
So you did not call this game, but I'm sure you've studied it. Is there anything the officials could have done better during the Malice at the Palace?
Oh my God, yes. Oh my God, yes. In fact, it's to be honest, it was handled very, very poorly. Very, very poorly. And our problem is, which really upsets me, which wouldn't happen today because Monty McCutcheon being our boss and a sharp guy. We would talk about that situation when we got to our camp. See, referees have a preseason camp also, and we would go over that thing for 5 hours if we had to. But back in that era when it happened, the following year, which obviously I'm still reffing, we never even went over the thing, which aggravates the hell out of me. And I went to the boss at the time, and I said to him, I said, why are we not going over this? And there was some kind of the guy who was our boss at the time was just it just isn't even worth talking about. But he just didn't want to talk about it. So here's what should have happened. When Ben Wallace, I think the game was a 13, 14-point game, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
I don't know if there's 3 minutes or 4 minutes to go in the game. When something like that happens and you have two big guys like that and they're combative and the game is essentially out of reach and they're pushing and they're coming in and they're coming back at one another, all you do is you go like this. You get in, you hit both of them with tees, and you throw them out. You just go to each coach and say, Coach, they are done for the night. Technical fouls offset or whatever it is. Now you go to replay. You're able to look at it, but you get rid of the players. Get rid of them. Get them off the court, not only for the game's sake, but for their own sake. Get rid of them. Get them off the court. Now, if those three referees would have done that, they wouldn't have had the cup thrown at somebody that is laying on the table. I would have never let a player lay on the table. I would have just walked it, said, you two guys, get out of here. Get them out. And if you did have replay and you screwed it up or there's something you could have did better, you bring the guys back onto the court. But now, get rid of them, especially at the end of the game like that. And it irks me to this day. I'm so happy that you asked me that question because no one ever asks what the referees could have done better. And I talk about it all the time when I go to clinics and camps. And even if players or coaches ask me, I tell them, I said the referees did a poor job with that. There are some things that referees just have to do. They have to take charge. And sometimes you take charge, and then the next day you get a call from the boss, and the boss says, hey, I don't like the way you handled that. Okay. All right. Now they tell you how you should handle it or should have handled it. But you have, as a referee, when you put that shirt on and you have that whistle, you have to take charge some nights. And some nights you're going to do something that people are not going to be happy about. And that, just get rid of them. Just get rid of them. And it would have been a whole lot better. You wouldn't have had the poor guys that got suspended for they wouldn't have ran back up into the stands. It just really irks me. Really irks me.
I was going to touch on that. Ron Artest at the time got suspended for a chunk of games the entire season, and then Jermaine O'Neal was suspended for a while too. And those Pacers were a really promising team. I mean, if you were reffing that game, the Pacers could have had a title in that season or maybe the next.
Well, I don't know if it was just me. I think a lot of referees would have done what I just spoken about. That crew that night they just did not do a good job, and it's just very, very simple. And why this is, and I'm on podcasts a lot, and I talk at a lot of places. No one has ever asked me that question. Is that the craziest thing in the world?
That is
no one
insane.
has ever asked me that question. And you asked that question. I went, wow, this is awesome.
Well, you're making us feel good.
So thank you very much for asking.
You mentioned the replay, and that kind of transitions into obviously there's been kind of an expansion of replay in recent years, especially in this most recent season with the coaches' challenges.
Yes.
How do you feel about the implementation of that? Is the game being slowed down too much?
Yeah. When you're a referee, you want to get it right, and I don't see anything wrong with it. I mean, when I was refereeing and they were talking about it, I didn't know anything about it, and I probably said something stupid like, "We don't need it. We need it. We need it." It's referees don't want to go back to the hotel and they screwed up a play and they're looking at the ceiling all night long, or they can't sleep for a week or 2 weeks. Could you imagine working a finals game and you don't have replay and you miss them? You call a 2 instead of a 3. And the last shot of the game would have cost somebody a championship. It's probably happened. Back in the old days, it probably has happened. And I think about that all the time. Jesus, God, how about if I kicked an out-of-bounds play in a game? You know, it haunts me. Now it's like, well, you can go over there and you get the out-of-bounds play correct. The right team gets the ball. The two or the 3 is a 2 or a 3. You know what I'm saying to you? I got a funny story for you. I worked the Game 6. They say it's the greatest game in NBA history, the Miami-San Antonio game.
Oh, man, we were going to ask you about this.
Yes.
You were on the baseline.
Well, yeah, I'm on the baseline, but here's the goof. My good friend Duke Callahan, who's now runs the G League refs, Duke's on the play. He's the slot. So he's standing right next to Allen. And I can tell from the lead when he shoots it, this is a no-brainer. It's a 3. Duke, in the last 2 minutes on a good goal like that, you have to hit the whistle right away in order for you to go to replay. You can't let them take the ball out of bounds and throw the ball in because now it's too late. So Duke hits the whistle, which he's supposed to do. He's right doing what he does. And I walked over to him and I go, "What's the matter?" He says, "I got to make sure on this one." I said, "Duke," I said, "I saw it." He says, "Now we're going to replay." I said, "All right, let's go." So we go over to replay, and we're right. It's a 3, but what happens is Pop sends a sub in, which he's not allowed to do. We don't catch it.
Oh, wow.
Right? We don't. Oh yeah. This is a big deal. We don't catch it. Luckily, the sub that came in doesn't score, and nothing happened. But Matt, my boss, knew, and we got fined, which we should have. We didn't get to play. We didn't see. We were just still all wrapped up in the 3. I'm wrapped up in why we're going over there. I'm pissed off at Duke because we're going over there. And I should have, instead of me being pissed off, I should have said, "Hey, we can't have any subs here, guys." Which we normally do. We normally go like this: "Hey, guys, make sure we don't have any subs during this thing."
It's understandable that that you weren't thinking about like all the possible implications, because it's a huge shot. It's one of the biggest shots in NBA history. When you get when you get to witness something like that up close, in the moment, are you, like, even as you're in your professional capacity, do you have a moment where you think, "Wow, that was incredible," or like upon further reflection, do you think, "Man, I can't believe I was there for that"?
Great question. One of the things that I regret the most, in fact, I had an email exchange with my former boss, Mike Banham, the other day, and I was just emailing him to see how he was doing during the pandemic, and he said to me, he said in the email, he said, "I had no idea." He says, "I'm watching all these old games." He said, "I had no idea you worked so many of those games." And I emailed him back. I said, "Mike," I said, "one of my biggest regrets is that I remember very few of them, because referees don't look at it like that. We're not looking at it like a fan or we work in 24-second segments, because of the possession, 24 seconds. I got to get to the next 24 seconds because I don't want to screw up. Got to get to the next 24 seconds. I don't want to screw up. Got to get to the next 24 seconds. I don't want to screw up. So you don't remember games. And it's one of my biggest regrets. I had the game years ago where Reggie scores all the points in New York. Remember?
Yeah.
With Spike. And I see Reggie, they were doing the TV, and I'm there in this capacity as working as in the capacity that I have now with the NBA. And I see Reggie, he's at the game, I guess doing TV. He says, Joey, the anniversary of that game in New York was the other day. He says, you were there. And I said, oh, yeah. Isn't it awful? I can't remember it.
Wow.
Isn't that awful? Because to me now, when you're retired, and it's, now I'm out of the league. This is, I think, my fourth year out, and I don't remember those kinds of tremendous things that happen in the sport that I love, and I do. I love the NBA. I love everything about it, and but I don't remember all that stuff. I remember Game 7s in the finals. I remember that stuff, but I don't remember that those great things like Reggie did and Ray Allen shot. And I don't remember that. I remember the Duncan thing.
Of course. You had lots of time to reflect on that.
Yeah, exactly.
On the contrary, you don't have a lot of time in a game, just as you were detailing with all the action going on. It's a very fast-paced game. Me and Bones, we both ref before, and it was hard. Do you think basketball is the most difficult sport to officiate?
Yeah, my brother and I talk about this a lot, and I give those guys their due. Everybody wants to say a baseball guy, well, he's fat, he's this, he's that. I think working behind that plate's pretty difficult. Guys throwing 90, and you're behind that plate, and it's 150 degrees or 120 degrees in St. Louis, Chicago, and I think that's difficult. I know our sport's difficult. It is difficult. I get it, but I think working that plate, and you got to get it across that plate, and I think that's very difficult to do.
Joey, so you once threw Don Nelson out 90 seconds into a game. Do you remember that? And if so, what was the story?
Don and I would never saw eye to eye, to be real honest with you. He wasn't buying my act, and I wasn't buying his. And I'm just being frank. I'm just being honest. And I think what transpired that night is I think I threw him out maybe the last time I saw him. And then he wanted to bring it up. I just thought that he was one of those guys that was a totally unfair man. I didn't think that he most coaches and in my history are really professional people, and they got a right to complain occasionally. But him, I just thought he complained for the sake of complaining, and he, like I said, he didn't buy my act and I didn't buy his. So he said something to me right in the beginning. He probably cursed. Then I hit him with a T, which I probably should have got away from him, because that's what we teach today. As soon as you hit somebody with one T, make sure that you get out of there as quick as you can get out of there, and your other referee will come down and stand by where that coach is. That's what we teach today, and it's very effective. But probably then he just maybe MF'd me, and then maybe he MF'd me again, and then I just throw him. I can't remember what he said, but I remember when I did it.
Well, it's an NBA record, so it's it adds to your immortality.
It's not a record. Is it in the record book?
Yeah.
It's the quickest ejection ever.
Yeah. Hey, we'll call Guinness right now.
So several Thunder players, this is a Thunder podcast after all, several Thunder players, current and former, are famous for moves that are intended to draw a whistle. So Kevin Durant and Chris Paul, they get lots of points from the rip-through move. James Harden is perhaps the most famous foul provoker of all time. He attempted 12 free throws a game last year. How do you officiate a player that is clearly trying to game the system like that?
Well, we watched tape after tape after tape after tape, and there's really what we try to do. And we don't do it every night. I mean, we screw up. We admit that we screw up. But what you're trying to do night in and night out is to call the same thing all the time. Now, do we know that Harden's going to do these things? Yes. Do we know? Yes, because we watch tape. Our referees pregame. They have a pregame meeting. They meet in the morning. They watch tape. And there are certain ways that a referee has to call plays, whether it's legal or whether it's illegal. It doesn't matter whether it's Harden or it's Chris Paul or it's Durant. Now, do we mess plays up? Yes, we do. Yes, we do. But just because somebody's trying to, what we call, fool the referee, that's what we call it. We call it fool the referee. If our referees are fooled, shame on them. But the referee is taught what is legal and what is not legal. And they're supposed to do that nightly. And sometimes you do get fooled. And remember too, we're just like a basketball team. We have some referees that are in their first year, some referees that are in their second year, and sometimes they get fooled. And we have to do, and I'm talking about us, the management team, we have to be able to prepare these referees for when that occurs.
So lots of fans watching the NBA feel that stars get preferential treatment. Are they wrong?
They are wrong. No, they are wrong. The referees, like I said, they make a mistake. Of course they make mistakes, but they're not making mistakes because of a superstar status or any of that stuff. They're making mistakes because they make a mistake. And I always tell people is that if referees, this is concerning the superstar thing, if referees make mistakes on superstars, I think it's pretty logical that they would make the mistakes on superstars because they have the ball most of the time. So if you're going to make a mistake, everybody in the whole arena knows that at the end of the game, who's going to take a shot for the Thunder, who's going to take a shot for the Lakers, who's going to take the shot for the 76ers. Everybody does. And that's the way this is set up in the NBA. So sometimes referees make mistakes, but they don't do it because they're superstars. That's the farthest thing from the truth. Not only do we have a referee department, we have an analytical department. And every referee is judged every night on every call and non-call that they make. So it isn't that referees can go out there and just do what they want to do. That is the farthest thing from the truth. Farthest thing.
Well, it sounds like there's a lot of accountability there. How difficult is it to ref physical freaks like Shaq and LeBron?
Back in the day, I think Shaq was the hardest guy I ever refed. And the game was a little different then. You know, a guy could be down there, just run down the court and get on the block and just trying to defend Shaq, and Shaq would come down and just knock him off his spot. And we would allow certain stuff like that, which we've taken care of that, and the rules have changed accordingly. But he was hard to ref. LeBron, some nights we do not do a real good job on him, to be very honest with you. He's so big and strong, like people bounce off him. I remember Mike Brown, when Mike coached him, said something to me on a play that I didn't call. And he said, Joe, he shouldn't be put at a disadvantage because he's bigger, stronger, and faster than everybody else. And I said to him, Mike, it's a good point. because sometimes guys like that, people bounce off of them, but our job is to call the plays by what the rule book says, what's legal and what's illegal. And when coaches and players ask you questions, that's what you should be saying to a player and coach, what is in the rule book, what is in our case book, which has 500 plays, and answer those questions accordingly versus just saying something stupid or off the cuff. Just tell the player or the coach what transpired on the play. But I think if you're honest, I know if you're honest with most players and coaches, they're going to accept it. They're going to accept the fact that you may miss a play.
Joey, in Oklahoma, we love our guy Russell Westbrook, but the dude gets a lot of technicals. Do you have any good Westbrook stories?
No, you know what? Somebody was asking me last week about Russell, and I said, no, I know what it was. It was my grandson. He'll be 21 in June, and we were talking about Russell Westbrook, and he asked me. He said, Pop, he says, how's he with refs? I don't remember Russell being bad with refs. I think if you look at that, it would be interesting to see how many technical fouls Russell gets from just being where he screams at another player. That would be interesting to me because I don't remember Russell being bad with refs. I remember him just playing the game. He's hard to ref because he's so fast. I remember when he used to take off. Now I'm, later in my career, and I'm saying, oh my Lord. Because now you're trying to get up the floor, to sit. He was really difficult to ref because now you got to ascertain whether the defender gets his torso in front of him for an offensive foul. I mean, he'd take that ball to the basket. He was strong and still is, but I don't think he's bad with refs, to be honest with you.
He seems like he's such an intense guy that it would be difficult to, understand where he is coming from, if there was a technical that could be warranted.
I mean, the laws of physics kind of bend in his wake. So, and NBA rules are for the laws of physics.
I don't find him. I didn't find Russell to be. I thought a lot of times he could get himself back quickly. Some players blow and they stay blown. I thought Russell, when I refed him, that he could blow and then get himself under control. You don't mind that kind of player because you got to allow the player to blow and get himself under control. If they do, and you won't hit somebody with a tee if they could do that.
Is block charge the toughest play to officiate? And if not, what is?
Yeah, I don't think the block charge is. I think you get one of them a game. I think it's very clear cut. I have it in my phone all the time. The rule: get your torso in front of the offensive player, and that kind of thing. The push off, the offensive guy pushes off. I don't think it really is. The toughest play, I think, in basketball for referees are out of bounds plays because there's so many of them. There's I would like to know how many there is. I have never asked our analytic people how many we have, but every tape that I watch, and I watched a lot of it, including today, is that you may get 5 or 6 out of bounds plays that are very difficult. And if you don't get them right, they're possession. They're points. So what we try to get our refs to do is the last 2 minutes is okay because you have what? You have replay. You can go over there and say, you get the out-of-bounds play correct. But there's 46 minutes of out-of-bounds plays that are brutally hard. That go off a guy's foot. You can't see it. There's 4 feet there. What foot did it go off? So what we try to teach our refs is don't guess. Ask your partners. Who did it go off of? If nobody saw it, the fair thing is to jump it up. That's the fair thing. That's what referees are looking for, is fairness. They're looking for fairness. But what happens with refs, including myself, you get this macho thing, and instead of asking someone for help, you go, white ball. And you're guessing. So that's our other big teaching point is do not guess. And when you guess, you usually guess wrong. But I've said that for a number of years, that out-of-bounds plays are the hardest plays.
That's interesting. I remember there was a game that the Thunder had against the Nuggets in the 18-19 season where we lost on an out-of-bounds play in the final seconds. They inbounded the ball to the Nuggets, and they hit a three, and Russell Westbrook got completely wiped out by an illegal screen, and it was missed. But it's tough because there's so much off-ball action, like you say.
Yeah, but if something is that extreme, like you said, I mean, I'd have to see the play. Then we should get that type of play. Those types of plays, because we have 3 referees on the court and we work a system. We have mechanics that we work. We have our playbook. Remember, we have a playbook, and if something is that egregious, that should be picked up. That should be picked up, and we don't like that kind of stuff.
Well, Joe, I got 2 more questions for you.
Sure.
One is, who are some players that understand the rules exceptionally well?
I don't think many do. I'll be honest with you, and they shouldn't. They have enough things on their plate that most the player that I thought was the brightest that I've ever been around and knew the rule book inside and out because he actually read it. He told me was Kareem. I just thought he knew the rules. I don't think players do know the rules, and again, I don't think they should. I don't find that to be bad. Do I think the coaches should know it? Yes, I do. And I think on some teams, I think they actually have an assistant coach that is in charge of the rules. I don't know that for a fact. That's not. I'm talking out my tush because I really don't know that for a fact. But I don't. That doesn't bother me when because it's our job. It's the referee's job is to educate those players in the rules. The players got enough to do. They're out there playing. It's the best players in the world. They got enough things on their mind. I haven't found many players that did know the rules that well. And to be very honest, I don't think I've ever really had too many conversations with players about the rules.
Interesting. Okay, last question for you. The average NBA fan's concept of Joey Crawford is an image of you springing from the baseline to make an emphatic charge call. Now, today's refs, on the other hand, are, shall we say, comparatively reserved. Do you think that kind of showmanship that you're known for is an important element of being a referee?
No, I really only did that a couple times in my career. And everywhere I go, they talk about the play. I did it in L.A. I came off the baseline like a nut coming off the baseline. It was like I was flying. And the reason I did it was because I had no idea what happened. I honestly God, I think it was Chris Duhon. And after I went into the locker room and I viewed the play, I went, oh my God, it was clearly an offensive foul, but I didn't see the defender, which we teach and say, I didn't referee or observe the defender for a long period of time. I was surprised by the defender, and I just guessed. And I came off the baseline, like a nut. Coming off the baseline, hitting my. We do not teach that. I do not think that's. It's not needed. You know what it is? I was called the next day by my boss at the time, and he called me. He says, Joe, you don't need to do that. And he was 100% correct. Because the fans may say, well, that's pretty cool, but it's referees are in the background. The players are our sport. They're our sport, So you got an offensive foul, bang, call the offensive foul. And when I came off the baseline like that, sometimes now when I look back on it and when they bring it up, I think maybe I showed the defender up a little bit, which I don't like ever doing, is showing a player up because it was a block or a charge or whatever. And, it was funny and people got a charge out of it, but I don't think it's necessary, to be honest with you.
All right. Well, that's the last stop on the bus today. Joe, thank you so much for making time for us today.
Oh, no, thank you. Thanks for having me. Like I said, I'm very happy somebody wants to talk to you. You guys are excellent, too. You were excellent. Thank you again.
We're blushing.
Yeah, thanks, Joey.
You can follow Thunderbus on Twitter at Thunder_Bus_pod, and you can find us on all the major podcast apps. Until next time, thanks for riding the bus this week, and Thunder up! Would you like us to call you Joe or Joey? What's your preference?
It doesn't matter to me. I've been called every name in the book. It doesn't matter.